So how did you go about setting up Spoken Word London?
I set up Spoken Word London in June 2013, I think. I'd been living in Paris the previous year. Like, I finished my studies and went through this bohemian existence in Europe, and lived in a bookshop in Paris for a while, and started doing spoken word there. And it was odd that I had to go to another country to feel that like I had the like confidence to go and like read out my stuff in front of people, where I didn't know anybody at all. And the night there, oddly enough, was called Spoken Word Paris, and it was English language. I wasn't doing it in French, and everyone got 5 minutes, and everybody got more than 5 minutes. And then and there was a real like lovely community around it, and it was every week in a basement, still is every week in a basement in Ocean Noir in the 11th. And I came back to London, and I couldn't find, there were loads of amazing nights, but couldn't find anything quite the same as that. And so I was in contact with this venue called Vogue Fabrics that has like pictures of gender androgynous people with big penises on the walls.
As you go down the stairs, I got rid of them now, but
that was one of the like I think calling cards or the enticing details, and said, would you mind if I tried out Spoken Word Night? They were looking to make an arts programme, and they said okay. And for the first one, we had about 10 people turned up, I think. We were just in the corner. We didn't even have a light or anything. But we managed to have a little night of people performing, and they liked it. And so we decided to do it again, and then it built up, I guess. And eventually people like yourself started coming, people like P.S. Artiste and Ernesto and all the Roundhouse people, and it's evolved into what it is now, which is, I guess, popular open mic. And
what did you do in terms of promoting like the first few events? Like, I think I spoke to you once and you said that you'd never printed a flyer. Like that it was all just like social media?
Yeah, it was all social media. I decided to use Facebook, and so the Facebook page has been like from the very beginning the way of like getting the night out there and doing different Facebook events for every event. It's always been twice a month, and of course we went
we had that
weekly
6 months
for a
of
while,
weekly,
and oddly enough it didn't work out weekly. Do you know why?
No, I think it became just not too common, but I think the thing about spoken word initially that appealed to me was that it was every fortnight, so that's enough time to kind of prepare yourself to come back, and also twice a month is enough of a commitment to be like, I'm going to go to that night. But at the time we went weekly, spoken word had exploded across London, and there was like 4 or 5 different nights every single Wednesday, and I think people choosing which night to go to chose another one because they were like, well, we could go to spoken words anytime. And then as a result of that, like we had some very quiet nights. Like there was one, I remember one where I could only get 13 people to read. And that kind of just we lost a bit of the quality. I feel.
I think having it twice a month makes it like enough of an event that people can put it in their diaries. When it's weekly, people are a bit like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Do you want to talk about getting involved with Spoken Word London?
Yeah, so I came to Spoken Word London, we just talked about this, but for the first time in January 2014, and I'd had it recommended to me by Martin Sanderson, who I'd met at another night, and I just absolutely loved it from the moment I got there. Like, I was really intimidated at first, but then like I kept going back, and then after I'd been maybe like the 4th week that I'd been going, or the 4th one I went to, that's when I met Richard Perkins and Andrea Spisto and Sarah without an H and Dean McKee and Ibrahim. I remember, and this girl called Matty as well. I remember just like sitting on a bench with all those people and talking about it, and it was some of their first time, and we were all talking about how great it was. And then for a few months, it was every week I'd like reconnect with those people as well. And I think it's about the conversations that happen outside of the poetry as well as the poetry at Spoken Word London. And I always liked how you said this is a community night. It created fostered a better sense of community through the night, and like almost everything I've done in poetry has been a result of Spoken Word London, either from somebody coming to Spoken Word London and recommending another night, like you recommended Forget What You Heard at some point, and then I was like, oh, I wonder what that is, and then I went to that. And then through meeting like Jacob V. Joyce and Andrea Spisto, I ended up at Boomtown Festival running workshops and the special events you did as well with Jacob in Survival Guides at Brixton. I was part of that, and then the first anniversary, it's sort of just I didn't even think about it, but I just became really invested.
I think sorry, go on. No, I think the idea behind the night was always to try and foster that sense of community and to give a sense of connection, I guess, in London. I think in modern society, without getting too abstract and wanky and pretentious, which I tend to sometimes, there is a lot of disconnection in some ways. We're surrounded by advertising, which is trying to get money out of us, and we're surrounded by, and social media can be quite a lot of putting this perfect version of your life on Instagram. And actually, I think there's a line in Beth's poem where she goes I don't put pictures up of sitting in front of Emmerdale eating cheese from the packet. Exactly. And so in that and small talk, there's so much small talk that we have to navigate in modern society when you meet someone new with at a networking party or something, and that can be quite dislocating for us and for our generation in particular, the millennials, I guess.
I feel at Spoken Word London, the poetry is very sincere, regardless of how good it is compared to how much technique there is in it. It's generally quite sincere, and I think that forms better relationships when you talk to somebody who's just poured their guts out. You're talking about those real life things, and it sort of fast tracks friendship. I
think that's why spoken word has exploded in such a way. I remember talking to Ernesto Sarazali, and he was he's been on the scene for ages, and he said beforehand there was quite a few spoken word nights, but in the past 5 years it's mushroomed and exploded. So that kind of lust or need for connection and honesty and truth has really kind of informed the spread of spoken word, I guess. And Spoken Word London is supposed to be about, I guess, anybody coming up and having 5 minutes to share and to speak, but it's also about listening. It's also about resonating with what that person is saying and connecting with them. And if you get emotional truth, then you get that connection.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing about Spoken Word London compared to other spoken word nights. And it sounds really obnoxious because I now help run Spoken Word London. I'm it's just so good. But I feel more than any other night, it's real because people are listening. And it's because of that sort of element of egalitarian nature of it, everyone getting 5 minutes and everyone's an open micer, no one's doing a feature, you get that real into having conversations with people. And I've seen poets perform at Spoken Word London that I've seen feature in other places, and I feel way more able to have a conversation with them at Spoken Word London because we're on equal footing than if they did a feature. If I seen a poet I really admired do a feature at a night I'd paid to get into, I might not approach them. But if I see them at Spoken Word London, I feel it's free to go and talk to them. We're all the same, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. What did you think about when you first hosted it? Because obviously you were an amazing regular for a long time, and you were always I guess my biggest supporter when I was there with the hat on, greeting people, and it was always such a pleasure to see your smiling face. And then eventually, I think there was a time when I couldn't host it, and so I got in touch with you and said, Hannah, can you do it tonight?
Yeah.
What was it hosting it instead?
Terrifying. Okay. Trying to be Pat Cash, to live up to. I think the first time I hosted it was in that summer of the first anniversary, so it's summer 2014, and it was really, really intimidating to host it. But obviously the night just runs itself. I think it's really low-key hosting at Spoken Word London. It's not about the host, it's about facilitating. And I think the light didn't work the first time I hosted it.
Oh, really?
So it was, luckily it was summer, so there was some light, and then by the end I think we were in the dark. But then when I came back from travelling and you asked me to help you do it on a more regular basis, again, it was really intimidating, but I didn't agree to host Spoken Word London because I that was something I wanted to do. I just wanted the night to happen. So it was more out of necessity than an actual desire to host. And I'm really glad that we had that 6 months of being weekly, because it really enabled me to develop my presence on stage as a host. And because I think I was quite shy. I think Dean McKee said to me once, Hannah, your voice is really high pitched when you're hosting Spoken Word London, because I'm okay, hi. But now hopefully it's sort of but it's just amazing. It's such an honour to facilitate such a space and hear people performing amazing work and really having quite catharsis on stage and seeing those conversations happen and people giving each other their contact details at the end of the night, like
that's lovely.
It really is a community, and I can't tell now who was friends before they came to Spoken Word London or who's just friends because of Spoken Word London. But there's a big group of people that are always like, hey, how are you? Like catch up with each other every night. It's nice.
You just reminded me actually like how the regulars and the friendship group does change like over the time, because at the beginning there was P.S. Artiste, if anyone who doesn't know. P.S. Artiste is an amazing poet performer who does a lot of erotic poetry, and she'll turn up at the end and then finish the night off with some kind of erotic poem. But obviously she hasn't come for a while, and so there is that natural progression of like people, different groups begin to come and different like regulars. There's almost like different groups that kind of at the forefront of it for a while, and then they dwindle out, and then like people always come back. Which is really nice. And they always like agree to like be part of the specials, because now like there's, I guess, to talk quickly about the open mic, I guess what is really important, or for me, like about originally setting up an open mic, was that people who feel that they've got something that they've written, because I think lots of people write, and more people write than perform, and they sit at home maybe and type or write out their kind of like innermost feelings, or put something that's been traumatic for them, or something that's funny for them, or something that's good about their life. It's not all woe is me. Into spoken word and poetry, which I think is sometimes like the impression that people get. But then the actual like finding the nerve and the bravery to come and read it out is really intimidating for them in some ways. And I think there's sometimes this idea that in modern society that if you read, people are so scared of reading out in front of people because they think that they automatically get the idea that everyone's going to condemn them or dislike them, and that's not the case at all, I don't think. And so with Spoken Word London, having an open mic is supposed to be about really giving that space for people who performed 1,000 times to come along and be part of it, but also for people who really are just there for the first time and feel friendly and feel supported and feel, I guess, empowered enough to come up and speak in front of people.
Yeah, and I think we're really lucky that we've had so many talented artists come and perform and come back to Spoken Word London. Like, I think the quality is really strong at Spoken Word London compared to some other open mics. I wonder if you've got any thoughts on that, like why maybe the quality is strong at Spoken Word London, or do we have a duty as curators of a night to kind of ensure some level of quality?
That's an interesting question. I don't think like we can, because quality is subjective in many ways. Like we can't say like that's bad poetry, so you can't read again. But I think in terms of safeguarding the audience, safeguarding like people who have come to be part of the night, and making sure that there isn't such thing as like homophobia, transphobia, racism, misogyny, ableism, like read out is something that the host of any night will have to try and ensure. But it's treading that fine line, I guess, like between ensuring there's not censorship, but also making sure that making sure that everyone, if it is making a community, then making sure that the community feels safe and welcome is the imperative.
And having that ethos kind of clearly displayed.
And we try to demarcate that from the start with the like little intro thing, which is like Spoken Word London's to anyone to perform, but let's have respect for each other and respect for everybody in the room.
Yeah, I was thinking about quality and just thinking about how, for me, having watched lots of people over quite a long time perform at Spoken Word London, like I don't think there's anyone who hasn't improved as a result of doing it. Yeah. I feel like almost by osmosis, if you sit in that room twice a month and you listen to all the myriads of ideas and styles and techniques, you can't help but build on that. And I don't think people are necessarily like stealing styles or poetic devices from other performers, but I feel like there's a sincerity that gets sort of transmuted, and people think about their own ideas and how they express themselves more clearly from watching somebody do it really well. also actually like from getting the audience, recently we've had quite a lot of people doing audience participation poems, and then other people coming and experimenting with that, that's really nice to watch. It's like a creative process happening on a stage.
I mean, the poet Dean Atter put up on Facebook the other day, like he said, like, you cannot write if you're not a reader as well, or if you're not reading, and I think that is applicable to spoken word as well. Like, you can't be a Hollywood poet, I think that's the term, who turns up, does their poem and then leaves because they don't want to hear any of the rest and they just want the glory. You know, like, being part of spoken word, being part of a community is about improving by listening to others. Yeah,
by immersing yourself in it in some ways.
And that's how you enrich your own experience of life and your own writing. Hopefully.